off the top rope here early. According to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, the Wizards are sending Deni Avdija to the Blazers from Malcolm Brogden, the 14th overall pick tonight in a 2029 pick. We don't know clarity-wise whether or not that's a first-round pick or a second-round pick.
I'm going to assume
it's a one.
I'm going to assume it's a first-rounder and a Woj character limit.
Yeah, I'm about to say. But, Craig, right off of the top here, your instant reaction to that move, it felt like, as you were mentioning, there is a little bit of a logjam for the Wizards in that 3-4 spot. But based off of the way Deni Avdija played post-All-Star break, I viewed him as one of the building blocks of the Wizards moving forward. But obviously, the front office not thinking the same way.
Yeah, I am. It's funny, our colleague Toby Altizer just texted me, and Toby goes, "Can you make sense of this trade?" And I went, "I'm going to try to on the radio."
Yeah,
so this is very, very much happening in real time. Apparently, there's 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Our YouTube chat, as you can watch. If you're driving home right now, you want to keep watching us, just go to your smart TV, hit YouTube at the Team 980, and we'll be live there. So stories of obviously evolving. I mean, on the most baseline level, I think the Wizards are selling high on Deni Avdija. And I realize that is not a popular opinion, but that was kind of my thing all last year. We talked about this on my show I think Deni is a very, very, very good basketball player. I think he's a great dude. I think he works really hard. But I do think that there is a ceiling there that is lower than people in D.C. want to admit when it comes to his role in a winning team.
Yes.
He's the 4th, 5th best player on a winning team. He's not your 3rd star. And if you accept that, you're on the hunt for those players. And if Will Dawkins looks at this draft and says, I think I can find that guy at 14, then it's a no-brainer.
Right.
Deni's on a good contract. I understand why Portland would want him. Because the thing is, like, they've got their superstar, right? Scoot Henderson's their guy. And so I understand it from Portland's perspective. I think it's worth a flyer. Deni, can he make another leap? But realistically, you know, I don't think Deni on a winning team is like a 20-plus point, 10-rebound guy. He's an 18-8 guy.
Right.
And those guys, I know those are good numbers, but they are a dime a dozen in the NBA.
Especially with his positional size.
And so if you can get, let's see, the Blazers are sending their 2nd most favorable of their 2029 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks in the deal for Avdija, along with the 14th pick tonight, and Malcolm Brogden. And the other thing is, I think we learned this last year, Lynnell, is we saw the Chris Paul trade, and we're all like, what?
We have Chris Paul, right?
Yeah, and like we kind of knew they don't actually have Chris Paul.
Right.
And so is Malcolm Brogdon a piece they look at as a good pairing with Jordan Poole, you know, a little bit more defensive-minded guy who can certainly take some of the shots, take some of the pressure off some of the younger guys? Or do they flip him for another pick by the end of the night tonight?
And I think that's the interesting piece of this. When healthy, Malcolm Brogden has proven himself to be one of the better two-way guards in basketball. He's in the ilk of a Derek White in Boston. They're very similar players, and I think when healthy, there are contending teams that say, hey, he can play that role for my organization. And if you're Washington, that's what you have to bank on. I know we're playing hypothetical here because we don't know the long-term plan. I don't want him here long-term in the backcourt with Jordan Poole.
Sure.
The injury history concerns me, and I just think right now, if you are the Wizards, it is about asset collection, and that ultimately is why this deal was made. If you're just joining us, the Washington Wizards wasting no time with the NBA draft getting ready to start in under an hour. They have already made a significant move. They now have 3 first-round picks, number 2 overall, and then number 26 overall, and they just acquired the 14th overall pick from the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for Deni Avdija. As Craig just mentioned, the second most favorable.
So I guess the Trailblazers must have 2 picks in 29.
They have 2 picks in 29. They're sitting the pick that's not the highest.
I'm guessing one of those is the Bucks pick, right? So 2029. There's a chance that by 2029, both the Bucks and the Blazers stink. Probably not with the Bucks, because Giannis still should be pretty good.
We'll see.
Somehow 2029's not that far away.
No, it's not. Scary to think about, isn't it?
It is wild, but that's 5 years away, and Giannis will still be probably pretty good. But like Lillard will be long gone by then. We'll see what iteration the Bucks are. The Blazers have a long way to go. Maybe the Blazers are good by then with Scoot Henderson, and we'll see what ultimately happens. But I think the other thing about this is Brogden is an expiring contract. So Brogden, is 22.5 this year, so you could do the straight player for player.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any salary filler. But Brogden does clear your decks. And I think another thing to think about in the long-term rebuild of the Washington Wizards is eventually they're counting on this as a place that people are going to want to play.
Right.
What they do tonight with these picks, they now have, and remember, they have 26, so do they package 14 and 26 up to go into the top 10 again? Like, do they back out?
Like, interesting.
I think what we have to understand about Winger and Dawkins at this point in the process is they value flexibility.
Yes.
They value wiggle room. Now you've taken a guy in Deni who they clearly liked, but I don't know that they loved, and that's me speculating based off the sheer fact that they just traded him. You take a guy that you like but didn't love, you turn his long-term money into one-year guy in Brogden. Who cares what that one guy is? And then you have more flexibility moving forward. And that is ultimately a good thing for when you want to start spending some of that money. It also allows you to take on money in trades.
Right.
So if you have to, maybe make a trade and take on a bad contract to get a good player with that, you're a dumping ground now, which is a really valuable place for teams to be that third team even in a trade.
For sure.
As two other teams do more pertinent things, that winds up getting you an extra first-round pick, especially in the next two drafts, which are loaded, even though tonight is not.
It is quite the contrast, right? For years, it felt like the Wizards were giving out bad contracts. Now they're taking them on in order to get draft capital. And I think, as you mentioned, the long-term flexibility financially is what Washington is securing moving forward. The two largest guarantees on your roster contractually are Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. And if you are buying into any of the reporting coming out on those guys, Kyle Kuzma, another guy that may well be on the move tonight. Craig, I want to ask you this. We knew coming into tonight Washington had a little bit of a logjam at that 3-4 spot. Moving Deni Avdija out. We've seen some of the betting odds. I think it's right now at minus 550 for Alex Sarr to be that number 2 overall pick. Do you think moving Deni increases the likelihood that that pick is Alex Sarr? Or do you think those are two independent things?
I think that I don't think, like, Sarr is the more important thing. Like, the pick is the more important thing. Deni Avdija's presence on this team or not is not going to impact who they take. Here's where I think it matters, right? Ultimately, you have to have minutes for these guys.
For sure.
We want to quickly welcome our audience on 106.7 The Fan, who just joined us. Nats postgame. Craig Hoffman, Lynnell, Willingham. I'm now doing Lynnell's job because he's driving the show, but if I don't keep talking, then I'm going to lose my train of thought. And the train of thought I'm having right now is in response to breaking news that you might not have heard yet if you're just joining us on 106.7 The Fan and haven't checked your phone in the last 5 minutes, which is ahead of tonight's NBA draft. The Washington Wizards have traded Deni Avdija, their 23-year-old star forward, to the Portland Trailblazers. They get 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and Malcolm Brogden in return. But ultimately, where this matters for Alex Sarr is if you don't trade Kuzma and you have Avdija, you have Sarr, and you have Bilal, there just aren't enough minutes to go around to maximize Alex Sarr. If he becomes the most, and he and Bilal become the most important people in the organization, maximizing their development is your number one most important thing. And if Deni's around taking minutes from those guys, you can't do that. And so you just signed Deni to the contract. You don't want him to be unhappy with his minutes. You undo the logjam. You create flexibility. I know I'm on Wizards Twitter right now, and people hate it because they love Deni. But I think you have to understand that this is a long-term thing, and really getting 2 firsts and 2 seconds for Deni Avdija, say that out loud. They got 2 firsts and 2 seconds for Deni Avdija.
If I would have told you that,
that's not a bad deal.
Put it in this perspective. If I told you that a calendar year ago when we were out here last year on the concourse, you would have said, well, what did Deni do over the last 12 months to get his value that high? People can be sad about Avdija being moved. I think this is, as you mentioned, what this part of the rebuild is about. They sold high on a guy that they may not have had in their long-term plans. And I think ultimately what they can get at pick number 14, a guy like Keyshawn George out of the University of Miami, I think comes in right away at 6'7", gives you that positional size, can defend, lacks a little bit of the athleticism, but you can see the vision for, where they could go the rest of the way tonight. The other thing about this that I wanted to mention is something that you touched on briefly. There had been a bunch of different reports out there before this trade had happened, Craig, that Washington was interested in acquiring a third first-round pick. They now have that third first-round pick. It's now up to Will Dawkins and company to get creative. Can you package 14 in 26? What does that get you? And is there a player that they are coveting within that top 10 that maybe is on no one's radar? Because the thing about this draft, despite all of the conversation about this class being weak, you know my old adage with it, it is up to the talent evaluators to go out and find the diamond in the rough. And I think Washington, with Will Dawkins running things, has a good one. But there could be someone in that top 10 that Washington may have had as the number one player on their board, but they know he's not going to drop, and they now are smiling ear to ear after this deal.
Well, let me throw a couple names at you.
Yeah.
One that makes a ton of sense is Nikola Topic. He is 18 years old, played in the Adriatic League last year. He would probably be a top 10 pick and was someone whose name was bandied about at number 2.
Yeah.
Before he tore his ACL early in the draft process.
And that's my thing.
Right? But we know how to fix ACLs. It's 2024.
For sure.
So if you are a team like the Wizards and you have a long-term view of your organization, you don't care if he plays this year. So you
that, and I understand that perspective, but I'm going to speak for the fan for a second. We're already going through a pretty miserable rebuild, which are gutting this team in real time.
Hi, Will Dawkins here. If I win you a championship in 5 years, do you care?
Am I going to be around in 5 years, Mr.
You'll come back.
If you're here now, right, you'll be back.
Brother, if you've lived through Wizards basketball.
And you know me and you have.
I mean, forget our lifetimes.
Right.
Okay? Since 1979.
Yes.
They haven't won 50 games since 1979. You can wait a couple more years. And if Nikola Topic is a top 3 talent in this draft, and you get 2 of the 3 best players because one of them tore their ACL, hell yeah, that's a good use of the 14th pick, or trading up to 10 or whatever. You know, and the other one you have to mention, and this would be a trade up, is Tinjon Saloon, because he's the third French guy. Well, and so clearly we're just collecting French guys.
And if that's the case, then that is the case. More on him, though. I was watching some stuff on him last night in terms of the offensive freedom that he was able to have. The three-point shooting numbers are not there. I believe he shot about 31% last year in the league that he played in, but the volume is there. It was on 4.5 to 5 attempts per game. So he actually had a little bit more offensive freedom than a Zachary Richichet or than an Alex Sarr. And Richichet obviously gave that freedom toward the end. But I am intrigued by a name like him. But we're just getting started here, live out on the concourse at Capital One Arena. Lynnell Willingham alongside Craig Hoffman here at the Washington Wizards official 2024 NBA Draft Party. The Washington Wizards active early here, about a half hour before the draft officially gets underway. If you're just joining us, moments into the program, the Washington Wizards pulling the trigger on a deal that sends Deni Avdija to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for 2 future first-round picks, as well as Malcolm Brogden. A couple of seconds being thrown in there as well. We gave our reaction to the pick. I'm still reacting here in real time because Deni was one of my favorite players to watch last year, and I thought amidst all of the losing in the 40-point blowouts by half, Deni was the consistent guy in terms of playing hard each and every night, and he had a career year for the Washington Wizards, but obviously not a part of these long-term plans. The Wizards, though, also have the number 2 overall pick and the number 26 overall pick, and I want to talk about 2 here for...
Well, hold on. Can I follow up on that for a second, though? Because I just got a tweet that I actually really like, and let me ask you a question, though. Did you like the OG Anunoby extension for the Knicks today?
No.
A lot of money for OG Anunoby,
a lot of money for OG, and but they're pushing in the chips to try to win now, so I get it.
So at Commies for Life, because the Commanders have a fantastic way to shorten their nickname. At Commies for Life goes, people also keep bringing up his contract, but the team is going to be terrible for the duration of it. By the time they compete again, he'll be a free agent again. Do you want to give him a 5-year, $250 million contract to be ideally the 4th best player on the team by then? And, like, if you look at what the Knicks did and you're like, that's what I want. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you keep Deni Avdija for the long run, and in 4 years, when his contract is up, he'll be 27 years old, and you can pay him, it might be 5 years, 310 by then, with the way the cap's going and the new media deal and all that. It's not really about the amount of money, it's about the percentage of the cap, but it's going to be a lot. because Deni's going to continue to produce for a bad team at a high level, and you're going to have to pay him max money in 4 years, and you will not have done a lot of winning between now and then. Or you can reset the clock with the 14th pick tonight. You clear the decks because you go, the only thing that matters in trades from the money matching is this year. So you go 1 for 1, and you trade Deni's long-term money for Brogden, who's expiring after this year, who you may be able to flip for another asset.
Well, that's what I think's going to end up happening here, but I think Washington has a little bit of leverage because he is an expiring contract.
For
teams
sure.
are going to covet that.
And then 2029, like, you get another pick. Cool. Let's see if we can add another cheap guy in 29. Or the other thing is, because someone else tweeted me and was like, well, what do we care about the 2029 pick? Okay, trade that one.
Yeah, if you want to. At this point, it's about asset collection, and I think that is a hard concept for fans to grasp because it's not fun. It's admitting that you're not ready to win right now and that the product that's going to be out on the floor coming up in the fall isn't going to be very good. But I think what you said earlier is super intriguing to me. Now, there are a bunch of different ways they can ultimately go with this thing. But I have to think if you're Will Dawkins, if you're Travis Schlenk, if you're Mike Winger, Troy Weaver now in the mix, and you have the scouting chops that these guys have, no disrespect at all to Deni Avdija, they've got to feel in their heart of hearts that they can 110% get a better prospect at 14 than what Deni Avdija has turned into the last 3 or 4 years.
I mean, it's hard because Deni's so young. That is the part of it that I do struggle with. Like, he is 23 years old. I just saw Tom Haberstroh, my pal, formerly of ESPN, does a bunch of great work. Actually, ironically, including covering the Blazers on TV. He just tweeted out, Deni Avdija is younger than Dalton Connect.
He is.
So, like,
there you go. Yeah.
If they draft Dalton Connect tonight, congrats, you've upgraded your shooting, but you've actually gotten older. Well, right, with that 14th pick, right? I don't think Connect will be there, but that is the kind of wild thing about this. But I do think I do think that they like. I tweeted this last night after the Brooklyn-Houston swap, right? So Brooklyn trades with Houston a bunch of picks that allows Houston to have Phoenix's pick swaps. They get their own picks back, and it's just this giant 3D chess game. And I think a lot of fans and frankly analysts, and like, I'm someone who follows the NBA at a pretty intense level and understands a lot of this CBA stuff. Like, I actually wonder if the NBA has a problem now. This stuff's become so complicated, it's impossible to follow. Like, the 3D chess that these front offices are playing right now, you see it come together for, like, Boston, who started 10 years ago. Right. Like, the Celtics title that they just won started with the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade to the Brooklyn Nets in 2013. 2013! And it paid off in a title in 2024. So you just have to have, and everyone would say that they did a great job building it. For sure. Right? And they got lucky. Exactly. With some of the way the Brooklyn's pick spell and the lotteries and the whole deal. Philadelphia self-owning, trading out of drafting Jason Tatum to draft Markelle Fultz. Like, there's a lot of stuff that had to go right for Boston to get one. And I think you just have to kind of stop looking at these deals in a vacuum. Like,
because people are upset about the deal. That's the overall consensus.
Of course.
Deni's
popular. Right. He's good. He's ascending. But I also think he's...
The point
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. Deni Avdija by Wizards fans is overrated.
Well, yeah.
Like, now it sounded like a hot... That's like the most hot take sports radio thing I feel like it's ever come out of my mouth. But it's true. No, it is. Deni Avdija is overrated by Wizards fans because he's the best guy that was here. Right? In certain things. But Deni Avdija, like, oh, he'll guard Giannis. Yeah, you see what Giannis did to this team the last couple of years?
Exactly.
He dropped 50. How many guys have to drop 50 on you before you go, maybe you're not an elite perimeter defender? Yeah. And I understand he's ascending, but, like, at the end of the day, they got a guy that they are selling high on, they think they can improve on, and I think they're right.
And the point that you made about the contract, and Commies for Life made about the contract moving forward, like, based on how high we all are on Deni, more times than not, it's going to play out that way to where when the Wizards are good, Deni is going to be worth $250 million. And then your books are going to be all screwed up because he's going to be the fourth best player on your team, making a boatload of the cap.
At that point, you're going to want to actually bring in free agents. Exactly. They're going to want to come here, and you're not going to have any room to sign him. And so, like, it is an asset management game that is a multi-year cap sheet, and they have hired a lot of people whose job it is to understand that, to play the 3D chess on the long term, and to just be like, I'm sad the Wizards traded my favorite player. Like, I'm sorry.
Look, as I was saying all football draft season in reference to Adam Peters and the Commanders' new front office, what the Wizards have assembled here, and you can tell me if you agree or not, they're, to me, a top 5 to 7 front office right now in the NBA based off of track records of the guys that they have in-house. We are at the mercy of the evaluator. Whatever they say goes, and I'm on board with it because their track record and their previous destinations and how they've handled their first 12 months on the job here should show you that, hey, you got to trust these guys.
For sure. But let's not play dumb here, right? Deni's contract is amazing.
It is. Right now it is, yes.
Not only is it 4 years. Thank you. Someone said they love us, Lynnell. 4 years descending money.
Yeah.
Right? So by 2027, 28, when Deni's 27 years old, he's going to be making $11 million. That's stealing.
It is.
That's stealing.
In today's cap era, it is, especially considering what Deni brings to the floor. He ain't no scrub. We're not confusing him with that. He's an ascending player. And I think, as you continue to mention, the Wizards sold high. And it's refreshing from my vantage point because for once, they're moving with some sort of foresight looking into the future instead of being in win-now mode trying to contend with a bad roster. Like, that's what it's been before Mike Winger, Will Dawkins, and company came in. So I'm all on board with it. I'm super excited, though, to see what happens next because there are a slew of reports that, lead you to believe that Washington is trying to move back up into the top 10. And what fascinates me about that is we don't know who the hell they could be targeting in the top 10. You talk to folks in NBA circles, the talent range from 10 to 25, you get the same type of player. So let Will Dawkins, Mike Winger, and the Wiz Vengers, as I'm calling them, cook, because they're going to end up with a really good player tonight one way or another.
No, and I think that's 100% correct. And you now get guys on the same contract timeline.
Right.
And
that's a part of it that, I wasn't even thinking about in terms of just being from the fans' perspective. They know when they're expected to compete. Selfishly, I want it to be next year. I've been saying it all week. Well, if they draft someone that can come in and be a franchise-altering player, then maybe you accelerate your rebuild. But realistically speaking, they're still 2 or 3 years away. And tonight, I think, puts you in prime position to set the foundation for what this rebuild is going to be.
And at the end of the day, Lynnell, they won 15 games last year. No one's sacred. Yeah. And I hate to say that because I'm not trying to diminish Deni as a very, 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 very good NBA basketball player. But when you're the second best player on a team that wins 15 games, and you're getting 2 firsts and 2 seconds in return, and Malcolm Brogdon, who's not nothing, I'm sorry, that's not a bad deal.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.